Alright, in this section, this is the last video of chapter 6. We're going to do systems of inequalities, which is actually much easier than you might think. After we've been learning about how to solve systems of equations by different methods like substitution and elimination, for systems of inequalities we actually go back to graphing. So first let's define our terms. A system of inequalities is just two or more inequalities which have the same input and output variables. So the same definition as a system of equations, but of course they're inequalities instead of equations. And then next thing, solution to a system of inequalities. This is the region of all points that satisfy all of the inequalities. So just like a system of equations, the solution is where the lines cross, because that one point is on both lines. Here we want to find the region of all the points that are satisfying both inequalities. And if you remember, a two-variable inequality, you shade it either above or below. So for example here, if you've got an axis, you might want to be above one line while simultaneously being below the other line. So which points are both above one line and below the other line? Well, that might be only these points over here. And so I'll go through the proper technique to shade your answer in the next slides, but that just gives you an idea of what we're headed towards. Okay, problem solving tips. Solve by graphing is not only the optimal way, it's the only way, because you have an infinite number of points which are your solution. Your task is to shade and graph each inequality together, so you already know how to do that, but instead of putting them on two different graphs, you're going to put them both on top of each other. Remember to use solid and dotted lines as necessary, and remember to shade above or below. So this part is just like before, plotting normal inequalities. You just plot two right on top of each other. The other thing is, when we were doing systems of inequalities called compound inequalities on the number line, they could either be an and, or they could be an or. But in this case, all of these inequalities are going to be and by default, unless it specifically says otherwise. So you're really looking at where they overlap in this case, not the union of the two, but instead just where they, the union of the two, where they overlap. Your shaded graph is your final answer. This is absolutely key. You don't have to put a box around it necessarily, but just be aware that your final answer to these problems is your shaded graph. There's no like x equals 5 or something like that. Just make a nice clear graph, and that means your graph needs to be drawn nicely. You need to have, your axis needs to have little tick marks on it so I can see what's going on. You should label the x and y intercepts. Like if you cross at a certain point like that, you want to label that 2. Label that 1, so it's nice and clear what's going on, and then of course shade one side or the other. And when you're doing two or more graphs on the same axis, you want to either use different colors for the shading, or you want to use some different kind of shading technique that makes it obvious, like crosshatch. So for one of them you shade this way, and for the other one you shade this way, so it's super obvious where they overlap, something like that. Okay, so we'll just do an example, and then we'll be all set, because this section is using the same skills you already know. And we're going to make an easy one. These are already solved in slope-intercept form. So this one has a slope of 2 and an intercept of -8. So go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'll have to add a tick mark right here. Intercept of -8. Slope of +2. So we go up 2 over 1. And again, you can do this only once and draw the line, but to make it accurate, especially since we have graph paper here, you actually want to go, I'm just going to go all the way until it goes off the page. That will guarantee almost perfect accuracy. Now, it's a greater than sign, so I'm going to shade above, and there's no equals bar, so it's a dotted line, and we're shading above. So all of this is a solution to that first equation. Now the second one, let me change colors, which I encourage you to do as well. Let me change colors to green. So the second one here is going to be the green one. We're shading below. This is an intercept of +4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. There's our intercept. Slope is -x, which is like there's a little 1 in front, -1. So down 1 over 1. So we put these dots. You even go backwards as well. Again, it's a dotted line because there's no equals bar. Okay, and then I'm going to shade below this one. So now in green, I'm shading below. So the final answer, as you can clearly see, is the part where you're a solution to both inequalities, which means it's where the two colors overlap. So you can even go to like a third color if you wanted, and have that be your final answer, and it goes you know, in this region. Now, what this means is if you pick any point in this region, for example, this one right here, and you plug it in the first inequality, it will work, and you plug it in the second inequality, it will work. If you pick points over here, they'll work in the red one, but not the green one. If you pick points here, they'll work in the green one, but not the red one. And if you pick points over here, they will not work in either one. So the solution to the overall system is the points that are satisfying both inequalities, which means they have to be in the region that's shaded. So this, as messy as it is my final answer. Now, of course, when you're doing these, make them nice and neat, please. If you don't have access to multiple colors, like I said before, suppose here's your two lines. For one of the lines, you can draw lines coming out like this. And then for the other one, you can draw lines like this. And then you can see that where they cross hatch, this is your final answer, and then shaded in nice and solid. The other thing I'll note for you is when you're doing your original two colors, make them pretty light. Don't make them really dark. That way where they overlap, you can then make it dark and it's super clear and easy to see. Alright, that's it for this section. The last video in Chapter 6 is going to be a Chapter 6 review of everything, and then we'll be moving on soon.